David Mamet's Oleanna, first performed in 1992, is a terse, provocative two-character play that explores the volatile intersections of power, language, gender, class, and education. Set entirely in the office of a university professor, the drama unfolds as a series of escalating confrontations between John, a male professor up for tenure, and Carol, his female student. What begins as an awkward academic interaction quickly devolves into a harrowing battle of accusation and authority. The title refers to the folk utopia, Oleanna, a failed 19th-century social experiment founded by Norwegian immigrants, symbolizing the idealistic pursuit of equality that collapses under human imperfection. In Mamet's play, this dream of utopia is replaced by a nightmare of miscommunication, power struggle, and moral ambiguity. Structure and setting. Oleanna is a three-act play with only two characters and one setting: John's office at a small university. The dialogue is intentionally fragmented, featuring overlapping, interrupted, and elliptical speech, a hallmark of Mamet's style. This Mamet speak intensifies the emotional tension and emphasizes the inadequacies of language as a tool for truth or understanding. The play's minimalist structure forces the audience to focus on the shifting power dynamics between John and Carol, and invites multiple interpretations of who is right or wrong at any given moment. Act 1. Misunderstanding and vulnerability. The play opens with Carol, a struggling student, visiting John in his office to discuss her failing grade. She is nervous and unsure of herself. John is distracted, preoccupied with a series of phone calls related to the purchase of a new house, symbolic of his impending tenure and rise in social status. Their initial conversation is awkward. Carol claims she doesn't understand the course material and finds John's lectures confusing and pretentious. John, in turn, attempts to comfort her by disparaging the academic system, offering her an informal guarantee of success if she continues meeting with him. He tells her he once felt stupid, too, and shares personal anecdotes. He places a hand on her shoulder at one point and tells her she's special, speaking in what he believes is a tone of encouragement. However, his condescension, casual paternalism, and careless boundary crossing make Carol visibly uncomfortable. Act 2. Accusation and power shift. Carol returns to John's office several days later. This time, she is composed, assertive, and accompanied by a sense of purpose. She reveals that she has filed a formal complaint with the university's tenure committee, accusing John of sexual harassment and inappropriate conduct. Carol quotes from John's own book and their previous conversation, arguing that his behavior was sexist, elitist, and exploitative. She insists that his actions, especially his promises of academic success in exchange for personal attention, were coercive and indicative of a broader system of patriarchal oppression. John is stunned. He insists that everything he said was misinterpreted, that he was trying to help, and that her accusations are both unjust and career-destroying. Their roles begin to reverse. Carol becomes the accuser with institutional backing, while John becomes defensive, desperate, and increasingly powerless. Mamet carefully stages this scene as a collision of subjective experiences, with Carol emphasizing systemic inequality and John insisting on individual misunderstanding. Act 3. Collapse and violence. In the final act, John's tenure has been put on hold, his house deal is collapsing, and his career is in jeopardy. He is agitated and trying to plead with Carol, who returns to discuss the complaint further. Carol is now completely empowered, calm, and firm in her resolve. She presents a list of demands, including that John removes certain books from the syllabus, including his own, and issue a public apology. John is incredulous. He believes she is attempting to censor his academic freedom and ruin him out of ideological zeal. As Carol refuses to back down, and John's sense of rational control unravels, their dialogue becomes more volatile and accusatory. The climax occurs when John physically assaults Carol after she accuses him of attempted rape. The act of violence confirms Carol's fears and completes John's descent from academic authority to emotional and ethical collapse. The play ends ambiguously, with no resolution or reconciliation. Only stunned silence and a shattered sense of certainty. Character analysis. John is a liberal, well-meaning professor who sees himself as progressive, informal, and intellectually generous. He is proud of his teaching style, which he believes is egalitarian and student-centered. However, he is also patronizing, egotistical, and blind to his own privilege. John's attempts to relate to Carol are clumsy and self-serving. He talks over her, minimizes her concerns, and manipulates the academic system to his benefit. His informal mentorship borders on condescension, and his physical touch, however brief, is an unacknowledged transgression. Over the course of the play, John is stripped of his authority, security, and self-image. His increasing desperation leads to violence, suggesting that his liberalism was always underpinned by an unexamined sense of entitlement. Mamet presents John as a tragic figure, not evil, but flawed, a man undone by his failure to understand the consequences of his actions and the changing norms of social conduct. Carol undergoes a dramatic transformation. She begins the play as anxious, confused, and insecure. Her early dialogue is fragmented and hesitant. However, she returns with newfound clarity, confidence, and a political vocabulary drawn from feminist and critical theory. Carol's motivations are ambiguous. Is she a sincere victim finding her voice, or a zealot manipulating institutional power for revenge or ideological ends? Mamet does not provide a clear answer. Her language in the second and third acts is often dogmatic and impersonal, suggesting that she may be performing a role expected of her by unseen supporters, the group she mentions. Carol critiques the gender dynamics of academia, asserting that John's behavior, however well-meaning, participates in a system of male dominance and female marginalization. Whether one agrees with her or not, her argument forces the audience to confront structural injustices and the subjectivity of harm. By the play's end, Carol is either a victim vindicated or a villain disguised as a revolutionary, depending on interpretation. A duality that fuels the play's controversy. Themes and analysis. 1. Power and institutional authority. At its core, Oleanna is about power. Who has it, who loses it, and how it is exercised. Initially, John holds institutional, intellectual, and social authority. Carol, as a student, is subordinate and dependent. As the play progresses, the power shifts. Carol gains leverage through the administrative apparatus of the university and a growing social awareness of harassment and inequity. John, once confident and untouchable, becomes helpless. This inversion challenges the audience to consider how power operates within supposedly objective structures like academia. Mamet presents power not as static, but as fluid, situational, and shaped by perception. 2. Miscommunication and language. Mamet's stylized, interruptive dialogue reveals how language can obscure meaning as much as reveal it. The characters constantly misunderstand, interrupt, or talk past each other. Their failure to communicate mirrors the broader cultural and ideological divide between them. Language in Oleanna is both a weapon and a shield. John uses it to deflect responsibility, couching his intent in intellectual abstraction. Carol uses it to frame her accusations, quoting theory and legal rhetoric. The play thus explores the limits of language as a medium for empathy or truth. Words are slippery, contextual, and deeply tied to power. 3. Gender dynamics and feminism. Carol's accusations highlight how gender inequality is embedded in academic and social structures. Her perspective reflects feminist critiques of patriarchal authority, particularly the ways in which male mentors wield power over female students. However, Mamet complicates this by denying Carol a fully sympathetic portrayal. Her articulation of feminist arguments is often rigid and impersonal, suggesting a detachment from her own lived experience. This ambiguity forces the audience to wrestle with what constitutes harassment, whose narrative deserves belief, and how justice should be enacted in power-imbalanced relationships. 4. Class and privilege. Carol and John also represent different class backgrounds. John is wealthy, educated, and upwardly mobile. Carol, by her own admission, struggles to understand the academic discourse and is likely from a lower socioeconomic status. Her frustration is not just intellectual, it's cultural and economic. She sees John's world as exclusionary and elitist, and her accusations are a way of challenging a system that marginalizes her voice. This class dynamic deepens the play's exploration of power, showing that academic institutions reproduce inequality under the guise of meritocracy. 5. Ambiguity and moral relativism. Perhaps the most enduring quality of Oleanna is its refusal to provide moral clarity. Neither character is entirely right or wrong. The audience is forced to interpret actions without definitive cues. Mamet does not offer a villain or a hero. Instead, he stages a tragedy in which good intentions turn destructive, and justice and vengeance become indistinguishable. The play becomes a mirror, reflecting each viewer's own biases, fears, and beliefs about gender, power, and accountability. Reception and controversy. When Oleanna premiered in 1992, it sparked intense debate. Coming on the heels of the Anita Hill-Clarence Thomas hearings, the play tapped into a cultural reckoning around sexual harassment and gender politics. Some praised Mamet for his provocative engagement with difficult issues, while others criticized him for portraying a woman as manipulative and vindictive, thus undermining real survivors of harassment. Feminist critics have debated whether the play reinforces misogynistic stereotypes or critiques institutional power regardless of gender. Mamet himself has maintained that the play is about the dangers of ideological certainty and the complexity of human interaction, not a political statement. Conclusion. David Mamet's Oleanna is a taut, unsettling exploration of how language, power, and identity collide in a volatile world. Through its minimalist setting and emotionally explosive dialogue, the play dramatizes the crisis of communication and trust between men and women, professors and students, privilege and marginalization. Its brilliance lies in its refusal to resolve. It offers no moral verdict, no comforting closure. Instead, it leaves the audience to interrogate its own assumptions, prejudices, and allegiances. In the age of #MeToo, Oleanna remains as relevant, and as uncomfortable, as ever. It challenges us to consider not just who we believe, but how we listen, how we speak, and how power silently structures every interaction.